The rain fell hard, hammering the streets of Los Angeles with unrelenting force, as if the night itself conspired to match the chaos unraveling in Brooke Logan's world. She had just seen it frame by frame, pixel by pixel on a phone screen she hadn't meant to unlock, a clip she hadn't meant to find. But there it was. Ridge Forrester, her Ridge, in the studio parking lot, arms wrapped tightly around a woman she couldn't recognize, lips pressed against hers in the kind of kiss that had history. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't a goodbye. It was betrayal, raw and undeniable, captured in high definition. Brooke didn't ask questions. She didn't confront. She didn't even scream. She simply grabbed her car keys, threw on her coat, and walked out the front door, her vision already blurring not just from the rain or tears, but from the wine she'd been drinking alone before the clip shattered her calm. The house lights faded behind her. The city swallowed her whole. She didn't know where she was going. She just drove, fast, recklessly. The windshield wipers thrashed against the storm, and the streetlights stretched like ghosts across the wet pavement. Her heart pounded louder than the engine. Every flash of the clip replayed in her mint hand on Ridge's back, the way his head tilted into the kiss, the unmistakable tenderness that spoke of something ongoing, not accidental. The road twisted. Her grip loosened. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, blurring her vision even more. And then, in an instant of pure loss of control, the car jerked violently to the side, tires screeching. A hard swerve. Metal tore through wood as the vehicle plowed into a roadside fence, snapping posts like twigs. Glass shattered. The airbag deployed with a thunderous pop. And then, silence. Brooke's body slumped in the seat, unconscious, blood trickling from a gash above her eyebrow. The storm continued as if nothing had happened. Her phone lay cracked on the passenger side floor, the last frame of Ridge's betrayal frozen on the screen. It could have been anyone who found her. But fate has a cruel sense of irony. It was Taylor Hayes returning from a late therapy conference across town, headlights slicing through the downpour, who saw the wreckage first. She pulled over instinctively, years of medical training taking over. The moment she saw Brooke's blonde hair against the deflated airbag, her breath caught in her throat. Taylor moved quickly, professionally, pushing aside every ounce of personal history. She called 911, checked Brooke's pulse, stabilized her neck, and stayed by her side in the rain until help arrived. She didn't ask for recognition. She didn't think about Ridge. In that moment, she was a doctor first, a human second, an ex-rival third. At the hospital, the night took another turn. Brooke woke up groggy and confused, lights too bright, memories too sharp. Her first words were slurred but pointed. I want a divorce. No hesitation. No stalling. She wanted out. She wanted to erase Ridge Forrester from her life completely. She didn't care about apologies. She didn't want explanations. She just wanted freedom from the man who had humiliated her for the last time. Taylor, seated beside her hospital bed, sighed. She could have nodded, could have agreed, could have let Brooke burn the Forrester world to the ground. But instead, she reached for her professional mask, speaking not as Ridge's ex-wife or as Brooke's historical adversary, but as a psychiatrist. You're hurt, she said softly, and I get it. But this isn't the moment to make life-altering decisions. Not while you're bleeding. Not while you're processing shock and betrayal. If you want to leave Ridge, fine. But don't do it while you're broken. Brooke scoffed, tried to sit up, failed. The pain kept her down, but the fire in her chest only grew stronger. Still, Taylor's calm voice cut through the haze. Not as an enemy. Not even as a friend. But as someone who knew too well the emotional wreckage Ridge could leave behind. Heal first, Taylor added. Then decide. But the damage had already begun to ripple. By the time morning hit, news of the accident and Taylor's involvement was everywhere. Eric Forrester heard it from Donna. Steffi and Thomas got it through text alerts. Hope was already at the hospital when the nurses whispered that Taylor had saved her mother's life. The Logan sisters closed ranks around Brooke, visibly cold to Ridge when he arrived. He hadn't even known Brooke was gone until the hospital called. He rushed into the room expecting chaos. Instead, he was met with stone silence. Brooke wouldn't look at him. Katie refused to let him near the bed. Donna stood with her arms crossed, blocking the path. Ridge tried to speak. "Brooke, I can explain," but the words fell flat in the air. The clip had already spoken louder. Outside the hospital room, the Forrester corridors buzzed with whispers. "Did you hear? Taylor found Brooke in the crash. She might have saved her life. Imagine Thather X saving his wife after he cheated." Suddenly, the moral landscape shifted. Taylor, once the outsider clawing her way back into respect, was now the unlikely hero. Ridge, always teetering between two women, now stood accused in the court of public opinion. And Brooke, bruised, vengeful, held all the cards. The fallout was swift. Hope refused to attend any meetings Ridge called. Eric expressed deep disappointment. Even Steffi, who once blindly supported her father, asked the question Ridge couldn't answer. Who was the woman? Ridge had no good answer. He barely remembered the moment. It had been a lapse. A private encounter with a woman from the past he thought he could keep buried. But now the video was out. And so was the damage. Back at Brooke's estate, the mood turned cold and focused. The wine bottles were gone. The blinds stayed open. Brooke was healing fast, and with every passing hour, her determination solidified. She wasn't going to cry over Ridge. She wasn't going to beg for explanations. Instead, she asked Carter for a private legal consultation. Ridge tried everything. Letters, voicemails, a bouquet that Brooke refused to accept. But nothing changed her silence. Taylor tried to stay out of the emotional battlefield, but her name was now in everyone's mouth. She had saved Brooke. And whether she wanted it or not, that made her the unexpected moral compass in a family that was rapidly losing its way. Even Zende and RJ exchanged looks in the halls. No one knew who to side with anymore. Ridge had become toxic. Brooke, though sympathetic, had turned cold. And Taylor, quiet and consistent, had won a sliver of respect no PR move could buy. By the end of the week, the balance of power had shifted. Brooke wasn't just recovering, she was preparing. For what? No one knew exactly. A legal move. A company shake-up. A public statement. Whatever it was, Ridge felt the weight of it before it even landed. He had always danced between Brooke and Taylor, but for the first time, both women had stepped out of the ring and left him exposed. The family dinner that weekend was the most awkward in Forrester history. Silence between bites. Avoided eye contact. Ridge sat at the end of the table like a man waiting for execution. When someone mentioned Brooke's name, the room shifted. Taylor cleared her throat and excused herself. The kids pretended not to notice, but everyone knew. The old alliances were gone. Brooke had seen the truth. Taylor had saved her. Ridge had betrayed them both. And the bold and the beautiful would never be the same again. As the days passed, Brooke's silence became louder than any confrontation Ridge had ever endured. She didn't throw things. She didn't shout. She simply disengaged. Her face, once filled with longing and fire, was now unreadable. She didn't take his calls. She didn't respond to his messages. When they crossed paths at Forrester Creations, she treated him like a business associate, polite, detached, lethal in her emotional precision. Ridge, who had weathered years of romantic chaos, didn't know how to fight a woman who had already emotionally walked away. Meanwhile, the Forrester estate simmered with tension. Taylor, uncomfortable with the spotlight her act of heroism had brought, tried to deflect attention, but the truth was undeniable. She had saved Brooke's life physically and emotionally. Ridge had failed her. And now everyone saw it. Steffi found herself caught in the middle more than ever. She wanted to support her father, but she couldn't ignore the facts. Her respect for Brooke had grown in the quiet aftermath, especially when Brooke refused to paint herself as a victim. She simply moved forward, one decisive step at a time. Steffi watched it all unfold and realized something chilling. Her father's reign, both in love and leadership, might finally be ending. Eric Forrester, observing the unrest in the company and his family, called Ridge into his office. It wasn't a conversation, it was a reckoning. Eric laid it out clearly. This family is about legacy, not scandal. And lately, your decisions are costing us both. Ridge tried to explain, to defend himself, but Eric didn't want excuses. He wanted accountability. For once, Ridge had none. Brooke, now back at home, but still under close watch, met privately with Carter. Her words were careful, but her intent was sharp. She didn't just want a divorce, she wanted a clean break. No drama. No back and forth. No second thoughts, she said. Just end it. Carter, surprised but impressed by her clarity, agreed to move fast. Within days, the paperwork was ready. All it needed was Ridge's signature. When Ridge finally received the documents, he didn't touch them for hours. He stared at them like a death sentence. They weren't fiery or emotional. They were clinical, final. It was then that he realized he wasn't being punished, he was being removed. Brooke had stopped loving him out loud. That was always his safety net, her passion, her fire, her ability to forgive. But now she was ice. And Ridge Forrester didn't know how to survive in the cold. Across town, Taylor stayed quiet but watchful. She visited Brooke once more, at Brooke's request, expecting tension. But what she found was something unexpected: peace. The two women sat across from one another, not as rivals, not as co-victims of Ridge's indecision, but as survivors of the same storm. "I never thought I'd say this," Brooke said, pouring them both tea, "but I'm done fighting over him." Taylor smiled faintly. "Me too." And in that moment, something rare and powerful was born, not a friendship, not yet, but a quiet alliance. An understanding. The war was over, but outside of Brooke's calm, another battle was brewing. News of the split spread through the industry. Paparazzi began circling again. Fashion blogs speculated wildly. Who was the mystery woman in the video? Was she someone from Ridge's past? Or someone new? Hope Logan, protective of her mother, went into full PR control. She gave subtle interviews about powerful women moving on without naming names. The message landed. Public opinion began tilting in Brooke's favor. Ridge became a punchline. Taylor became a symbol of grace. And Brooke, she became untouchable, a woman who had walked through fire and come out cleaner than ever. But Ridge wasn't done. Not yet. Late one evening, he appeared at Brooke's doorstep. No camera crews. No flowers, just a man soaked by the rain, again, but this time, not the passionate, fleeting Ridge of the past. This Ridge looked smaller, defeated. "Just let me talk," he said. Brooke stepped aside, not out of mercy, but closure. He poured it out. That the woman in the video was someone from his past. A designer they'd once hired briefly from Milan, someone he had history with before Brooke, before Taylor. She'd come back into town, they talked, and the kiss, it just happened. He didn't plan it. He didn't pursue her after. It meant nothing. But Brooke didn't blink. "That's the problem," she said. "You never think it means anything. But it always does. You were never unfaithful out of hate. You were unfaithful out of carelessness. And I can't keep living with that." Ridge tried one last line. "You're still my Logan," she smiled, for the first time in days. "Not anymore." He left in silence. The divorce papers were signed the next morning. With Ridge out of the picture, the balance of the Forrester world shifted permanently. Brooke took a step back from the daily grind of Forrester creations, letting hope lead more. But her presence remained powerful. Investors backed her. Clients trusted her. And for the first time in years, she was free, not just from Ridge, but from the pattern that had defined her. Taylor returned to her practice full-time, re-establishing herself not as a Forrester appendage, but as a therapist with real expertise and clarity. Her name stopped being paired with Brooke in gossip columns. Instead, she began hosting panels on emotional boundaries and women in recovery from toxic love cycles, interviews that went viral. Ridge, now alone, struggled to find footing. The mystery woman had long since left town. His kids were cool toward him. His name was no longer a shield. And at every Forrester family gathering, there was an empty seat no one talked about. But Brooke, she smiled more. She slept peacefully. She sipped tea with Katie in the mornings, walked the beach at dusk, and for once, didn't look over her shoulder waiting for a man to fix or fail her. The clip that shattered her world turned out to be the key to rebuilding it. And as the storm clouds finally broke over Los Angeles, Brooke Logan stood not as a wife, not as a scorned woman, but as a survivor of love, betrayal, and the Forrester legacy itself. And this time, she wasn't looking back.